In 2018, two friends banded together to write a slasher film. The film told the story of an axe-wielding maniac killing a group of friends. After writing the script, the two friends casted the film and got everyone together to do read-throughs. During these read-throughs, two other people would bond over an improv YouTube channel called Sugar Pine 7. As their talks grew and grew, eventually the question was asked, why don't we make that? So a few weeks later, the lousy show was released on YouTube and was met with high praise. While the show would eventually go down the road of MCU superhero slop, it started off with watching an innocent friend group get into wacky situations. Why do I talk about this? Well, because I'm one of the friends mentioned. While I didn't initially come up with the idea of the lousy show, I wrote a few episode plots and wrote the slasher film I had mentioned earlier. And the two who came up with Lousy Show, well, that would be Jacob Rook and Carter Canfield. Growing up in a small Christian conservative town in the rural Midwest, you don't often hear about kids making content for entertainment purposes. But that's just what we did. And while it never truly blew up to big proportions, Lousy Show gained a cult following, and with that we made tons of content on the Lousy Films YouTube channel. For example, B&R Reviews, a weekly series where Ral and myself would watch, review, and reenact a film. The Ewan Show, like the Lousy Show, but with our Mormon friend Ewan. And tons of shows and films that never got made. But what about the biggest one? Well, the Grooks initially started as Lousy Films R-rated comedy series, whereas Lousy Show was more family friendly. Grooks went completely off the rails and made very risque jokes. The first episode opened well, which made Carter, Jacob, and myself want to rebrand it and turn it into something better. So in 2020, we came up with the idea of a seasoned detective training a young cadet while they try to take down a crime lord. Carter, Jacob, Dylan Lau, and myself filmed what was supposed to be an original series called The Grooks. But as we all know, in 2020, COVID struck, and like most friend groups, we all split up before coming back together in 2021 and releasing Grooks as a film. When it opened to a huge cult following, we knew we had to work immediately on a sequel, and when that one opened to even better reception, we began working on a third installment. But unfortunately, it will likely never happen. I posted a great review on my letterbox that I will link in the description, and that kind of explains more in depth why a third Grooks likely won't happen. However, I myself have always wondered, what would a third Grooks have looked like? Behind the scenes, there were a few different storylines that Carter, Jacob, and myself had all brought to the table, but nothing we were truly dead set on. So that's what I'm here to do today. We're going to take a look at what a third Grooks installment could have looked like, and if it would have been any good or not. Exploring McCoy's backstory. The first and most obvious theory is that we would have explored Daniel Malloy, Safoy, Latoy, Machoy, Karoy, Jamoy, McCoy's backstory. And there was lots to explore. I mean, you have Walt Disney, him being cryogenically frozen during the Prohibition, him losing a game of poker to the victim's first film, and the victim of the first film's grandfather, and even his involvement with the pretentious Piggy. There's just so much you could touch on with McCoy, and that is something that I think would have been highly likely with a third film, especially with it being the final in the trilogy. McCoy, of course, would have played a large part within this film, so to think director Carter Canfield wouldn't have touched on the backstory of McCoy is absurd. But as to what is McCoy's backstory, currently the details are hidden within his dialogue, and to me, that is what makes McCoy such an intriguing villain. There's a mystery element behind him. Where is the pretentious Piggy, and what do we know about him? Pretentious Piggy was the main villain in Grooks 2, and he took the fan base by storm. I mean, he was this creepy pig butcher thing. Piggy's backstory was that he was a theater kid who went rogue after a bad audition and began murdering the cast. In 2024, Carter wrote an origin story script about Piggy, and it would have told the story about that very audition that sent him spiraling into madness. It was only a first draft, but it added so much to the character and built the world around the Grooks. But that would be the backstory. As to what was in store for Piggy in a third installment, well, that was rocky. Carter and I always knew we wanted Tyson to reprise his role. However, I know in a very early first draft in 2023, we thought about having the Grooks hold him captive in their basement before Piggy's sister came to pick him up, which would introduce a love interest for Griff. However, both Carter and I disliked that idea. Piggy, to me, I think Piggy would have played a role in Grooks 3, kind of more so like Hannibal Lecter and like the whole Silence of the Lambs series. That's how I kind of think Piggy would be used in the third Grooks. Detective Rook and Griff backstories. So actually, one popular amongst the fans would have likely touched the backstories of the two leads. Carter and I always wanted to write the story for a Detective Rook prequel taking place during the drug wars, which he mentioned in the first film, but a solid story never stuck with that. The big thing is we knew a lot about Griff's backstory, but some people did indeed ask for more. But Rooks definitely would have made for an interesting film. And I know a lot of people always ask, can we get something more on Rook? Can we get a more in-depth look on Rook? And we always tried to produce something, but no story ever stuck where we thought it was compelling, or we thought we had a story that we could milk out for about 80 to 90 minutes. But yeah, Rook definitely would have made for an interesting film. Being a seasoned detective who has been in the force for 52 years, there is a lot of story that could be told. And I'm sure in a third installment, it definitely would have happened in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how or what. Would Angela Smith and the Literally Slay gang have made an appearance? A segment / character that took audiences by storm was Angela Smith and her true crime podcast called Literally Slay. Everyone I talked to thought Megan was so funny in this movie, and I would have to agree. Megan joined the cast pretty last minute, if I remember correctly, and added so much to the humor of the film, and even so much to the film. Carter, Jacob, and I all wanted her back for the third installment, but in what way always kind of changed. Of course, she would have been playing a supporting lead and been a part of the comedic relief in the film, but we also wanted to make it to where her podcast had completely blown up. There were some funny stories to tell, and an even rumored spin-off that Carter was writing, but I don't think it ever picked up, or he found something where he could tell, once again, that 80 to 90 minute story. Netflix. So the CEO of Netflix was always a rumored villain that we wanted to make an appearance at some point. The issue we always came up with when doing writers' meetings was how. How would we introduce him, and in what way would that make sense to the story? I know in Grooks 2 we had mentioned that this has been picked up by Netflix, and that McCoy is working with the CEO of Netflix. So there was definitely some teasers there, but I guess the big issue was we just never really knew how to get him involved. And I think I can spoil this now. I'm not sure if Carter will rip my head off or not. Carter and I also thought about having other companies like Paramount, A24, Neon, 20th Century Fox, and a few others, that I'm just rambling off the top of my head, to distribute this film and then introduce the new production company as the bad guys, working with McCoy or some little McCoy plot, and that was kind of one that always stuck. I would say that was kind of because everybody that we talked to thought the Netflix bit in the beginning of the second Grooks, the Netflix bit everybody thought that was super funny, and it was just the dum from Netflix. And so we're like, what if we have like the A24 logo, or we have the Neon logo, or we even have like 20th Century, and we just came up with all that, and then have like these distribution companies or production whatever that have them be uh, like the bad guy, have their CEO be the bad guy and have it be like a McCoy plot. I don't know. It was just something that always stuck that we thought would just add a little bit of humor to the film. Walt Disney. Kind of something a lot of people figured was going to happen in a Grooks 3 film, and I feel totally comfortable spoiling it now. Walt Disney was always going to appear. There was a lot of things that are dead set where if we ever do eventually make that third Grooks installment, these things will happen, and I'm only mentioning like the more public and obvious ones. But yes, Walt Disney was always going to appear in a third Grooks installment, and in what better way than the grand finale? Our friend Parker Magnuson was going to play the role, and it was going to be so much fun. There was a story behind it, but in the off chance that Grooks 3, as I said, does actually happen, I want to save that element of surprise. And that's the thing with everything I bring up is a lot of the stuff I'm bringing up has been vetoed, or there's like a certain level of uncertainty to it on how or what way. There's pretty much no dead set story. I'm only kind of bringing up the stuff that was kind of like maybe, or we're like, I don't know, kind of got scratched, but yes. But to make a long story short, Disney would have been a major character in a third Grooks, and he would have been so badass. Cast size. So the cast size nearly like tripled or quadrupled, I can't remember, from Grooks 2 to 3. There was going to be an introduction of characters in all sizes, new main characters, and lots of bit roles. And they all would have had amazing personalities, as you can imagine, with the Grooks cinematic universe. Yeah, that was going to be the best part of Grooks 3, was just all that stuff. Higher budget, higher quality, and triple the fun. Captain Phillips. In the ending of Grooks 2, Griff and Rook leave Captain Phillips hanging after he offered them both their jobs back. Carter, I know, definitely wanted to reuse the Phillips character. And like everyone, their story changed every time we brought them up in the writer's room. There was a lot of stuff we planned with Captain Phillips, and even in one weird instance, even came up with a storyline where Captain Phillips was thrown in jail because he was caught working with McCoy on the end. It was just, that wasn't going to land. That one was just dumb. But yeah, a big thing that we were planning on doing though was having a decently popular comedian play the role of Captain Phillips' boss. I don't remember much of how it was going to go down, but I remember it was going to be fucking wacky. Like, it was almost going to be like a Smiling Friends bit, when it just becomes uber real. Like, it was just going to be super fucking silly. And no, I will not name the comedian that we were going to use, but you are free to take guesses in the comments below, and I might just heart your message if you get it correct. Time jumps. This was kind of a given between Piggy, between McCoy, or Rook. We were going to do time jumps in some way, shape, or form to tell the bigger story. That way we didn't have to do 950 origin stories. I remember the runtime in Grooks 3. There was a point where we genuinely were like, there's a real chance this movie could be about 2.5 hours long. We wanted to put a lot in there, and I think that was a big reason why Grooks 3 struggled to happen, was we wanted to put a lot into it, but we didn't want to make it too much of a clusterfuck. I know we kind of thought about doing it in 2 different parts, but yes, I do remember one, we just had a lot of story to tell and didn't know if we could properly fit it into the film. But yes, the time jumps were very likely to happen, and they would have been amazing. I mean, it would have been amazing. We did have some great ideas planned, but unfortunately it just didn't come to be. And that was today's video. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to me yap. I've always had a creative mind, so meeting Carter and Jacob was such a blessing, and together the 3 of us have made so many projects, many of which never got made. Grooks 3 is probably the biggest and saddest unmade film Just knowing all the potential behind it, and knowing that we all really wanted to make it. We just every time we were going to make a Grooks film, we knew we wanted to one up each one. And a big uncertainty with Grooks 3 was Grooks 2 everybody loved and everybody spoke highly of, and it got us a lot of popularity. I mean, there was an article in Carter's College written about Grooks 2. And it definitely blew up. And I mean, one story I remember is I was grocery shopping with my girlfriend at the time, and three people I had never met before asked me if I was Detective Griff from the Grooks. And when I said yeah, they asked for a picture with me. So knowing the stress behind making a third Grooks was high. And we just wanted to make sure that if we made a third Grooks, that it would be even better than Grooks 2. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I'm just going to say the chances right now of it probably aren't very high. But never say never, and I guess tell me in the comments below if you want a third Grooks or what you think would be in a third Grooks. But to make a somber moment happy, tell me your favorite Grooks moment, or as I said, even tell me what you would like to see in a third Grooks installment down in the comments below. If you liked what you watched today, of course, follow my letterbox, follow my Instagram, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't. I need all the engagement I can get. Thank you, and I cannot wait to see you again.